This is the 45 ACP, and I'm going to give you 5 reasons why you don't need one, and 1.5 reasons why you do. Dude, you have got to check out my new carry gun. Oh, nice. Wait, why are you carrying a 45? 2 world wars! Okay, but what else has it done? 2 world wars! Look, all I'm saying is that it's been almost 80 years since the last world war. Are there any other reasons? 2 world wars! Alright, already. We all know that the 45 ACP helped win 2 world wars, and nobody's taking that away from it, but the US military ditched the cartridge back in 1985, and I can think of a lot of good reasons why. This is a standard run-of-the-mill 45 ACP loaded with a 230 grain FMJ. Let's see how much it weighs. This is a standard 10mm loaded with a 180 grain FMJ. Let's see how much this one weighs. And this is one of the most common 9mm bullets of all time, a 115 grain FMJ. Let's see how much it weighs. So if I did my math correctly, for every 100 rounds of 45 ACP, you could carry just about 120 rounds of 10mm, or you could carry nearly 177 rounds of 9mm. That is just about double the carrying capacity. And speaking of capacity, the 45 ACP sucks at it. According to these calipers, the 45 ACP has a maximum overall diameter of about 472 thousandths. The 10mm comes in at about 420 thousandths, and the 9mm obviously comes in at the smallest 388 thousandths. That means that the 45 ACP's overall diameter is 12.4% larger than the 10mm and 21.6% larger than the 9mm. Now, a little extra width isn't always a bad thing, but whenever it comes to capacity, it definitely is. Glock 17, Glock 20, Glock 21, all full-size Glock magazines. But the Glock 17 holds 17 maybe? Yep, 17 rounds of 9mm. The Glock 20 holds 20 for sure. Ooh, so close. Actually, not really. It only holds 15 rounds of 10mm. And the Glock 21 holds 21? Not even freaking close. It only holds 13 rounds of 45 ACP. So as you can see, the 45 ACP absolutely sucks when it comes to capacity, but that's not the only thing it sucks at. Dude, this thing hits like the hammer of Thor. Wait, are you serious? Yes, watch this. Even though it's technically a big bore, the 45 ACP is probably not as powerful as you think. I mean, literally, with some Winchester white box loads, the 9mm is producing 40 foot-pounds more muzzle energy than the 45 ACP. And those are just regular FMJ loads. And if you think that the 45 ACP does a lot more damage than the 9mm just because of its larger diameter, then go ahead and check out my comparison video between these two cartridges, because the results are pretty shocking. But if we're being completely honest, most handgun cartridges don't have great terminal performance. Well, at least small handgun cartridges. I'm not saying I would want shot by any of them, but the 45 ACP just isn't very powerful in its standard form. Now, if you were planning on converting your setup to a 45 Super or a 460 Roland, then we're talking, but as is, the 45 ACP weighs a lot, it doesn't have the best capacity, and it's not very powerful. That leads us to reason number 4. With a pretty standard 230 grain FMJ load, the 45 ACP generates about 8.7 foot-pounds of felt recoil. A 115 grain FMJ load in 9mm produces about 5.5 foot-pounds of recoil, and a 180 grain FMJ load in 10mm produces about 10.4 foot-pounds of recoil, which is quite a bit more recoil as to be expected, but we'll leave that one out of the comparison. Anyway, that means the 45 ACP is producing about 58% more recoil than the 9mm, and keep in mind the 9mm is producing more muzzle energy than the 45 ACP. That is absolutely insane. But in the grand scheme of things, the 45 ACP really doesn't have that much recoil. I mean, you could see the 10mm had quite a bit more recoil, and that's not really that big of a cartridge either in the grand scheme of things. But compared to the 9mm, the 45 ACP still isn't as controllable for faster follow-up shots. But here's the real kicker. The 45 ACP doesn't offer anywhere near 10mm levels of performance, but it costs just as much to shoot. And on average, the 45 ACP is almost double the cost of the 9mm, which is absolutely insane, especially if you consider going to the range. Now when we start looking into defensive type rounds, the 9mm and the 45 ACP become a lot more comparable, but here's the thing, if you're just going to the range, you're probably not going to be using these rounds. And I don't know about you, but when I'm going to the range, I would much rather have twice the amount of ammo, especially if somebody else is tagging along. But if you're enjoying this video so far, I would really appreciate a thumbs up. Now, are there any pros to the 45? If you think the 300 Blackout is quiet, it is, but really only with subsonic ammo. And obviously not every 300 Blackout load is subsonic, but when it comes to the 45 ACP, basically every load is subsonic until you start getting into that exotic stuff like the civil defense and all that jazz. But enough talking, let's get to shooting to hear what this actually sounds like. This is a 115 grain 9mm load, and it's definitely not subsonic, so let's hear what this sounds like at the shooter's ear without a suppressor. Pretty freaking loud. Now how about with a suppressor? Oh yeah, that was nice, but there was still a little bit of a crack. And with subsonic loads, the 9mm is freaking awesome to shoot. The only problem is that most 9mm loads aren't going to be subsonic, or at least a decent amount aren't going to be. And just for comparison, this is what a supersonic 300 Blackout load sounds like out of a 16-inch barrel without a suppressor. Loud. Okay, but how about a subsonic without a suppressor? Not quite as loud, but pretty freaking loud still. How about the supersonic with a suppressor? I mean, it might be hearing safe, but it is still a pretty decent pop. So how about a subsonic with the suppressor? Yep, definitely pretty quiet. Now how about that 45 though? Here is what a 230 grain 45 ACP sounds like at the shooter's ear out of a Glock 21, unsuppressed. That was pretty freaking loud. Let's try it again with a can. I basically only heard the slide and it hitting the steel downrange, which is 60 yards away. This thing is freaking quiet. And guys, just in case you were curious, this is the Hybrid 46. If you want it just for handguns, don't buy it, because this thing is freaking heavy and it causes some jams sometimes. Get a pistol dedicated silencer. Just my opinion though. Anyway, the 45 ACP is honestly my favorite cartridge to shoot suppressed. Well, at least favorite handgun cartridge to shoot suppressed. The thing is, there's really only one more pro, and it's really not a full pro. Momentum. Notice I did not say power, but let me give you a little illustration of just how much momentum the 45 ACP is producing. This is a 22 LR, and it's only loaded with a 36 grain bullet, so not even a sixth of the weight of a standard 45 ACP bullet, but it should be going a pretty decent amount faster than the 45 ACP, so let's see what this momentum looks like on our target, and let's introduce the target. Let's face it, nobody likes wild hogs, or at least nobody that I would want to hang out with. So I will be shooting this hog silhouette with 3 different calibers, all of them on this flat plate right here. I'm going to be aiming down at the bottom of the flat plate. It's made out of 1/2-inch AR 500 steel, so it's pretty heavy, and we should get a pretty good idea of how much momentum each cartridge is putting out, as long as I hit it in the same area, or pretty close to it. And nothing too crazy. I mean, even with the 9 shots that went off, I could see the plate moving a little bit, maybe not even that much, I don't know. But this is a standard 115 grain 9mm FMJ load, and it's exactly half the weight of the 45 ACP, but 3 times the weight of the 22 LR, and it's also moving the fastest. So let's see what this one does to the target. There is no doubt that that 9mm was producing way more momentum. It was throwing that plate a crazy amount more than the 22 LR. We'll have to review in the camera footage just how much it was. And now on to the big boy, the 45 ACP. Definitely the slowest of the bunch by far, but it's also using a 230 grain bullet. So quite a bit heavier than anything else on this list. We'll see how much this weight plays into momentum on the target. Now that definitely seemed to be the most momentum, at least from what I could see. We'll have to review for sure in the camera footage, but I would say that 45 ACP has it in the bag. Yep, that's momentum in action for you. The 45 ACP definitely had the most of it, but at the same time, that momentum is what's causing the 45 ACP to have more recoil than the 9mm, so it's really not a full pro, more of a half a pro. And just in case you were curious, this is regular land, and then this is what it looks like when hogs get to land. They root just about everything, and as you can see, this tree is on an island pretty much. Definitely seen better days. So if you like slow, overweight, and overpriced things that are also silent, then you're probably a fan of the 45 ACP. But wait a second, I have one. What does that say about me? Guys, it literally started raining on me whenever I started making fun of the 45 ACP, so I don't know if this is proof that it's God's caliber or what. Seems to be that way though.